There's a game that has perhaps to change the landscape of Atlas. One of those games is probably Persona 3. And today, we're here to talk about the remake of Persona 3, Persona 3 Reload. Hello, I am Cyrus from Cyrus Gaming Spot, and joining with me today on this video is Swordfish1390.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
And like I said before, today we're going to talk about Persona 3 Reload. Not just the changes between Reload, we're also going to talk about if Persona 3 overall has held up to today, because Persona 3 was essentially the blueprint to the current Persona
formula, I guess.
Formula, yeah. I know, like, oh, Persona 1 and 2 doesn't exist. Persona, I know, like, they do exist, and I heard, like, they have some really interesting aspects to them, but, like, I don't think anybody can, like, deny that Persona 3 really put Persona onto the gaming landscape.
Yeah, Persona 1 and 2 were a lot more niche,
Yeah.
and like I respect them as games. Like, it's just that Persona 3 like set a precedent, and it's just hard to deny that that game was what popularized and made Persona what it is today.
Yeah. Persona 3 has we've just been getting boiled down to its basis formula. We've been getting like different versions of Persona 3 throughout the years with Persona 4 and 5. And their respective ports, you know, and that's like really simplifying it, since the Persona 4 and 5 are more than that, more than just another version of Persona 3. But like the formula found in Persona 3, like Persona 3 DNA can be found in Persona 4 and 5.
Yeah, 100%. Like, basically what Persona 4 and 5 do is take the exact formula of 3 and then just like polish it and improve it, and adds all kinds of bells and whistles.
But like, we're here to talk about the remake of Persona 3, Persona 3 Reload. So firstly, let's talk about the overall, I guess presentation and graphical style of Persona 3 Reload. That's the thing that probably stand out to you, just looking at the game right now. So like, obviously, being the latest Persona game, essentially, it has like the best graphical style of the game, at least since it was made for PS4 and the PS5 and like current console generation, unlike with Persona 5, where it was still being made PlayStation 3, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that aspect is very obvious just from looking into it. Like, the character models are better. I think, like, the environments looks pretty good. The models, I think, is like Persona 3 really is the best in this regard, just because it's the latest game in the Persona series. Technically.
Yeah, it's just a natural evolution of the graphics improving, and I think the models look really good. The full motion videos look really good with the animations being really fluid.
I would say like maybe like Persona 5 might have a better looking city compared to Persona 3, just because like, even though this is a remake of Persona 3, it's still based on the content that is in Persona 3. So they can't really do something as crazy as like
they can't go super drastic.
Yeah.
So they kind of were a little bound by what Persona 3 was, and just had to work with that. But but all things considered, they did a really great job recapturing that vibe and essence of the Persona 3 like town.
But we can now come to the contention part of the presentation, which is like there's two contention points I've heard. One is the anime cutscenes,
or basically lack of.
And two is the lighting somewhat. Okay, like let's talk about one first, okay? Firstly, this game does have anime cutscenes, okay?
Yeah, they exist.
They exist. The problem is like Persona 3 Reload isn't like a one-to-one recreation of the FES version of the game or the original version of the game. Some cutscenes that were shown in anime cutscenes in like FES are just rendered in game. and like the in-game cutscenes does look good, but like it doesn't really capture like the cinematography and like tone that the anime cutscenes did in the FES. And
yeah, like for example, compare the Awakening, the Orpheus Awakening of the two versions, and even though the Reload version was good and it did a good job, it just did not have that same edge that the original had with that animated cutscene. So, and actually, another thing I noticed too was that they actually also kind of did the reverse as well, in that certain scenes that were not animated in the original were animated in Reload. Like, and something, this might have just been me, but I noticed that a lot of the anime, the scenes that they chose to animate that were not animated in 2D in the original, in Reload, I feel like they animated scenes where there's like really not a lot going on. Like for example, a scene, I won't go into like spoiler territory, but in Persona 3, there's a part where Yukari is sitting on her bed watching a videotape that her father made to her before he died. And in the original, like in FES, it was just her sitting on the bed listening to the tape. In Reload, this is an animated cutscene, like 2D, but like there's nothing going on. It's just her sitting on the bed watching the tape.
I think I think they wanted to showcase like Yukari's facial expression more rather than
it's more just a matter of like that's kind of like showing like most of the 2D scenes in Reload. I notice a pattern of the like there's just not a lot going on as opposed to for example, like I mentioned before, the Orpheus Awakening, a super intense action-packed scene is rendered in game. There's a certain character death late near the end of the game that I won't spoil that was also animated in 2D in the original, but in game and Reload, etc., etc.
I actually thought that scene was done rather well though in game.
No. Oh no, it was good. Like all like that's the thing is all the FMVs, like the in-game cutscenes in Reload are good. Like they're really like they're good. I
thought it was on par with the anime cutscenes.
Yeah. I guess you could chalk it up.
I think the only point of contention for the anime cutscenes is the Awakening.
That's probably the biggest one. I feel like there's just no comparison between those two.
I'm just talking about in the base game. We're gonna talk about the answer later and talk about that because there are some cutscene differences in the answer too. But as far as the base game is concerned, like the only point of contention I have with the anime cutscenes or lack of it is like Orpheus.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably the most egregious one. Like I said, like the Reload version is good. Like it's not bad at all. But like, man, that Orpheus Awakening in the FES is just it's peak. It's iconic. I don't think there will ever be a Persona Awakening scene as good as that in Persona 6. I'm just saying.
I do think like the FES version is very intense. Like it really sets a good air mystery. Like what the heck just happened?
Yeah.
Like,
it's good foreshadowing.
Yeah.
It's good foreshadowing.
But I'm not sure. Like I like the FES version more or like the movie version more.
Oh, so I actually haven't seen the movie yet. I'll have to watch that.
Okay. Speaking cutscene differences, what do you think the opening? In FES, like when we're going to the dorm, it's all anime cutscene.
Yeah.
In Reload, you like physically walk to the dorm and see the coffins.
I actually like that more.
Yeah.
Like I think it creates. It adds to the air of creepiness, and you're free to like walk around. It's almost like Silent Hill-esque in the way that it feels. Like they really capture the essence of the Dark Hour perfectly.
Yeah, I think doing that walking scene like solidifies like what the Dark Hour is.
And that's the thing too, is because it also just adds to the mystery of it. It's really creepy, and I thought that was it's such a small addition, but it's substantial enough that I think it adds and it makes the intro better.
It sets the tone more, and once you learn the truth about the Dark Hour, it retroactively make you understand that Dark Hour more, rather than just based on pure exposition. At least that's what I think.
Yeah. I think being that physical interactivity of it in the intro, I definitely think makes the intro stronger.
This is full spoilers, by the way. We're going to spoil the whole thing, so.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, okay. I think the bridge scene with Aigis, and I think his name was Ryuji, right?
Ryoji.
Yeah, Ryuji. Like I think
Yeah,
the anime cutscene is better in this one compared to the
that
first
scene.
version.
That's
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, that scene
Yeah.
was better animated in comparison.
But yeah, overall, I think the way how Reload handles the anime cutscenes and the in-game cutscenes is done really well. Like there are parts of it where the original, or I say original, but I haven't actually played the original. I played the FES version. But like
they're identical.
Oh, okay.
They're identical.
I think there are some aspects where the original was better, and there's some aspects that I like better in Reload.
Yeah,
Like,
it's sort of
even,
like a crapshoot.
Like even comparing the anime cutscene themselves, it's still pretty different compared to like Fez got that. What's a good word for it? 90s grim tone to it. Like Persona 3 Reload can sometimes feel too clean.
Yeah, I think that, and also because we mentioned this before, that kind of is attributed to also I think the brighter lighting too.
Yeah. But
like Persona 3 has this like almost deliberate like not grimy feel to it, but like almost a sense of the only word I can think of is like deliberate unpolished in a way.
Yeah.
To add to its tone, that's I can't really describe it, but that's kind of how I feel.
But speaking of lighting, I guess we should talk about that. What do you think of the lighting of this game?
I could see why people would take issue with it. I don't really think it's that big of a deal. I will say I definitely think it does kind of take away from the tone a little bit, but it wasn't enough to like deter me from. It didn't take me out of it or anything. And a nice touch I do like about the game was when you get to January, the lighting of the dorm completely changes to something a lot more. It resembles the original Persona 3 to a T there, and I think that's actually a cool touch in retrospect.
Yeah, I think that adds to it more just because like you don't know this is gonna be a story about death, but it's still in the background somewhere.
Yeah.
And then once it's like once you see it full blown in the center, then the game like sort of tries to match it, and I think that really sort of fits with the theme of death because like it's everywhere around us, but we don't really notice it. So like,
and I think like in retrospect, I think I actually like that a little bit more now.
Yeah. But I can't understand why people might miss like the overall color grading of the original, just because, like you said, it matched how Persona 3 had this grind to it that Persona 4 and 5 doesn't.
So like when it comes to the lighting, I could see both sides, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think if I was to use the dorm as like the biggest example, after beating the game and seeing what they did and how they changed the color to resemble the original in January, I actually like how they do it in Reload a little bit more.
Reload also has this theming of water within its aesthetic too, which is I think a really good touch too.
Yeah, I feel like there might be some kind of deeper symbolic meaning to it that I'm not aware of. I mean, I've done a little research. I think maybe it has to do with like the cycle of souls and the Sea of Samsara or something like that. Kind of like that, like because death is a key part of the game, of the game's themes and the story. That's kind of what I took away from it. Like the water motif is definitely very slick and stylish, but I do think there is like a deeper story meaning to it too. But I don't feel like they did it just you know, because they thought it was a cool motif. I think there was a meaning behind it.
Hey, the water is where we learn the truth about the Dark Hour, where we meet Aigis, so.
Yeah, true. Maybe that was what they're going for all we know.
But yeah, overall, like it's like really slick in this game, and it's slick in a way that it's totally still different from Persona 5. I think. Yeah,
it doesn't. I think that was kind of a concern. Like I had a little bit was I was going to be like they're going to try to copy the menu style of Persona 5, and while you could see the influence, it definitely feels like it's its own thing at the end of the day.
Like I really like the theme of water in UI and like glass as well. Let's see, anything else to talk about the graphical style?
I don't think so. That's kind of. I think we touched up on pretty much everything.
Yeah. I guess. How about the voice acting?
See, okay, so I grew up basically with the original voice cast, so I'll always have like a bias to them. But I gotta say, I really think these new voice actors knocked it out of the park.
Yeah,
I
feel like I think like there's some voice actors like that does feel really different, like Akihiko.
Yeah, he's the biggest one, I think.
But there are also some that feel so similar that if you didn't know they would change, I wouldn't know it, or at least like I would notice it a little, but the change is like so small. Like with I think Yukari and Mitsuru.
Yeah, I even and also Junpei. I think Junpei sounds exactly how Junpei is supposed to sound.
Yeah.
And Mitsuru, like honestly, you could tell me that there was Terra Plot as the voice actors returning, and I would be like, yeah, I could hear that.
You know what the funny part is? Some of the original voice actor is still in the game.
Yeah, they made like a couple cameos. I thought that was pretty neat.
I mean, like Professor Officer.
Kurosawa.
Kurosawa is Liam O'Brien, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And the store, like the antique shop owner, is
Michelle Ruff.
Yeah, which was like Yukari's the old voice actor.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's pretty funny, you know.
It's pretty. Yeah, I think that's a nice touch. So, but yeah, ultimately, I thought all the new voice actors were great, and even like, there's a couple in the original that I prefer. Like, for example, I do prefer Liam O'Brien as Akihiko over the new one, but I think the new guy still did a good job. I just, you know, but I think the voice actor for Ken in this game knocked it out of the park. That's exactly how I think Ken should sound. So overall, yeah, like I said, I grew up with those original voice actors. I'll always love them, but I was not disappointed with the new voice acting at all.
Soundtrack. Like, I think like the game's soundtrack is done really well. Obviously, it's a remix, like a good amount of it makes remixes from the original, and like, I'm half and half. Like, I might prefer this one, but another might prefer the original. I think it's still done really well. The soundtrack.
Yeah. They captured. Yeah. I will say I've listened to the back-to-back. I do prefer the original soundtrack, but I don't think that the remixes were bad at all. And I thought that most of them were good. I just prefer the original for the most part. And I will say I think the new songs though are bangers. Yeah. Like that new battle theme is just it is like arguably one of the best Persona battle themes I ever heard, and it's just perfect. And it gives you all that much more incentive to get those ambushes. And what do you think of the new female vocalist?
I think they were good.
Yeah, I thought she did a really good job.
But yeah, I also were like, this goes to social links a bit. I also really like how all of the social links in this game is voiced. Which is
like because in Persona 3 original, they didn't have any voice acting at all. Like, there's literally just text. And then Persona 4 and 5, they did incorporate voice acting, but for the most part, they were just like generic voice clips and not like fully, like the fully voiced dialogue. Reload actually goes the extra mile, and every single social link is voiced. Every single line of dialogue is voiced in the social links. And I think that really makes them feel more alive. And the crazy part too is, like, honestly, like the characters in the social links sound exactly how I would think they should sound. Like when I play the original Persona 3, you know, I'm like, now I can't picture those characters without those voice actors now. Yeah. So I thought they all did a great job.
I guess we should discuss gameplay next. So like the gameplay of Persona 3 Reload is more similar to probably Persona 5. Than Persona 3 FES.
Yeah, I feel like they basically took Persona 5's like more fine-tuned mechanics and basically incorporated them here.
Like I think that like they took Persona 4 and 5 base mechanics, which is really like revamped version of Persona 3, and put it here, and then added a bunch of their own mechanics in it too.
Yeah, like the Theurgy moves I think are probably like the biggest addition. And how they brought back Baton Pass just under a different name. Yeah.
I would say I do prefer Persona 3 Reload's combat system compared to FES.
Yeah. Like
even though Persona 3 Reload does use a revamped version of the Persona 4/5 combat engine, they still do retain some of the aspects of Persona 3 combat, like the different weapon types, like they're like piercing, slashing, striking.
Yeah, which I like. I like that better as opposed to just having everything just be a general physical type.
I think that's neat, but like there are other mechanics that changes the gameplay compared to the original, like how gaining an extra turn is different in FES and Reload. FES, like you have to be able to, if you use a group attack, you have to knock them all down, or you don't get an extra turn.
Yeah. Which that could also be frustrating.
Or like if you miss, you get knocked down in the FES original.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also getting up from a knockdown would originally that would cost your turn.
Yeah. Like they still have that kind of in Reload, but you have to, like, once they're knocked down, you have to attack them again to make them dizzy. It's not a 100% guarantee, but like it's more likely to happen that way. How you go through combat is admittedly different in Persona 3 Reload compared to FES. I probably do prefer Reload's version.
Yeah, like
let's talk about the differences. Like, let's talk about how you can just get one more just from hitting at least one weakness.
Yeah, if you do a group spell and only hit one enemy with their weakness, that is an extra turn. But the thing is, that might make the game sound like too easy, but it's a two-way streak, as the same applies to the enemies too. So it's not. So it goes both ways. Yeah, that was what I was going to say.
But like, I don't think that aspect makes the game harder. It's just like it's just a different type. You go through the combat differently, kind of. In regards to
it's just a different approach.
Now, attacking, miss attacks being knockdowns, I think that's like more frustrating. Because like dodging isn't really something you can preemptively.
Yeah, like it just feels kind of like feels like. Yeah, it's like complete random, and it's not like not even your fault necessarily. You know. Like if I die or I got knocked down or something, I want it to be because it was my fault. Or if I get a game over, it was not like, oh, I attacked and I missed and I got knocked down, then I died. It's just not kind of like fair, I guess.
And I do think like being knocked down feels more deadly in the original. But also like how Reload, you have to decide between, do you want to knock this down for all attack, or you want to attack them again to try to dizzy them, so they won't have a turn to act. That's the case, you need an extra turn to set up something or heal and stuff.
Yeah, like there's still that extra like depth and strategy to it. It still exists.
Which is a contrast to FES, because it's just a knockdown that takes one turn. So there's no like choice in there. Yeah.
And like here's the thing is I've seen people defend the AI of Persona 3. And the thing is, I get it, and it works, especially when everything clicks. But there's no denying that there is a degree of chance. You just can't. There's no getting around that. And I don't like when I don't have full control, because I just feel like it takes away agency from the player.
I just say this, like, the AI can work. The thing is, I find Persona 3 Reload more fun with party control, just because this is a turn-based game with a party. So like, I would rather have the option that let me choose my actions with every party member, rather than putting a setting beforehand and just letting the AI do it. I feel like you have more fun that way, because you have more control over your party members that way.
Yeah, it's kind of like, think about it this way, it's almost like playing a Tales game with semi-auto. It's kind of like that. Like there's not that level of control. And especially with the fact that I think it's a lot more fun to like play around with the mechanics when you have that control. It just feels too limiting. Especially, another thing that was like frustrating is the original was you actually didn't even have all the AI commands at the start of the game.
Yeah.
You had like really basic commands that didn't cover every situation. So like it was even more frustrating than it had to be. So honestly, like I said, I can see to an extent why some people might think the AI was very a creative, artistic choice, but ultimately I think that it just makes the game not as engaging, and like I said, it just doesn't allow for the same freedom as having manual control does. So I think that's having Reload just bringing the manual control was the better decision, I think.
Now, like, I can't understand why people like it. Like, it makes the characters feel like maybe the actual self, maybe, because like you can only control yourself since you're only the main protagonist, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument to be made for that too.
But then it gets silly once you figure out like you're still inputting tactics for them to utilize, so you know.
So you can kind of so you can think of it in the same way like manual control is also like him commanding the party members. So
he's still commanding for tactics in the FPS version though, still.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's kind of like self-defeating in a way.
Yeah. And I'd rather character individuality be shown through their particular moveset and character abilities rather than just their AI.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I don't think that having it be AI controlled gives them that individuality the same way that just their individual like movesets, their personas themselves, etc., all that stuff is what makes them stand out as individuals.
Speaking individuality, I think Persona 3 Reload does a really good job of differentiating each of their characters. Not only through the particular moveset, which is already does a good enough job as it does. I think it also does this through Theurgy and the Theurgy abilities, like the ones that determine how you gain Theurgy. What are those called again?
Characteristics?
Yeah, characteristics. Yeah, the characteristics.
I think that's what it was. Yeah,
the characteristics. I think like they do a good job of making each character feel incredibly distinctive and have their own playstyle through through those aspects of the combat system.
Exactly, and that's another thing that gives the characters that sense of individuality.
And the characteristics not only make them gain authority through doing their specific playstyle, but also affect them gameplay-wise as well significantly. Like Yukari's is like all of her heal spells like cost half once she get her characteristics in, which is really really good. And
especially when the upper tier healing spells start to cost a lot, that is really beneficial for her.
Yeah.
And how her Theurgy gauge will fill up when she heals.
And I think like most characters' first Theurgy skill is pretty standard. It's just like a beat stick most of the time. But I think when a character get their second Theurgy is where they get much more interesting. When you have to choose between the two, because like outside the main character who has like a bunch of Theurgies, which is just the Persona fusions from the Persona 3 portable game. Like each character got a pretty interesting Theurgy to do. Like Mitsuru got either her ice one or the one where it does almighty damage, which debilitates. But I think the ice one does more damage. So you have to choose between if you want to debilitate one that does decent damage, or the ice one that does a lot more damage.
But at the cost of not having that extra perk of the debilitating.
Or with Ken, which he got a definite glow up in this game, as well as Koromaru. Not only due to the Theurgy, Ken's and Koromaru's Theurgies are pretty insane. Also because they have like actual curse and light skills that they can use in battle rather than just being insta kills.
Yeah, because Persona 5 had the light and dark damaging spells. I thought bringing that back in Reload was a nice touch.
Yeah, their 3D skills are really like Ken is really strong. Like it restores your HP. It gives you a reflect for both physical and magical. So the only thing that can go through are almighty damage, and not many enemies have almighty damage in the game. Oh yeah, that's really good. And then like Koromaru is just like a physical support with him giving everyone a charge, which is that's really useful too. Like that's really good, since like at least Persona 5 And this game, physical is really strong. Once you get like specific setups to crit more, and that having auto charge is really good. So if you auto charge and crit, that's like a lot of damage. To the point where having a physical build at the late game can make the game significantly easier than it should be.
Yeah, but the thing is at the very least you're not given these like super like strong theurgies right off the bat. You gotta play. You gotta play ways into the game.
And then theurgies also ignore resistances, which is adds to their how powerful they are. Which gets to the point where people think theurgies are pretty overpowered in the game. And yeah, I would agree they are pretty overpowered. I will say like you can't spam them as often. I think because like usually you can only use 2 or 3 per battle, if that.
Yeah, I mean, like they're overpowered when you can use them, but it's not like it's a resource you can access at all times. That's I think that's the difference. So I think that in a sense, the whole overpowered complaint is overblown a little bit.
I would say like this game is probably easier than FPS, even at its hardest difficulty with its merciless.
I do agree that at the same time, it's like I think that the game is more fun to play because it has all these extra mechanics.
Yeah, I do think it's more interesting and fun to play in Reload than it is FPS. But like, I do think FPS can feel a bit more brutal at times, just because of like how missing can get you knocked down, and how knockdown is just like a 1-turn stun essentially, as well as how the fatigue system work in Reload. I mean, in FPS. Where it's not really a thing in Reload.
Yeah.
But I do think like Reload is more fun in this game.
Yeah, like I said, like that's the thing is I don't think a game has to be debilitatingly difficult to be fun, as long as like I said, like Reload adds all these different bells and whistles to the combat that you can play around with, and it makes the combat more interesting even if it's not as hard.
I would say like I would prefer if Reload was a bit more challenging.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, maybe make 30 a bit more trickier to gain. But overall, I do think like the combat additions does make this game a lot more interesting. I especially think Baton Pass make the game more interesting because it gets you to use the other characters more. Because like in the original Persona 3 and Portable, it does like with how I played it, I just mainly used the main character. So like the fact there's like a baton pass mechanic, which is shift in this game, makes it more feel like a party game rather than just the Makoto game.
Yeah, where he's got some like meat shield as backup or something like that.
Overall combat, I think, is much improved in Reload. Like it's, I'm not sure if I prefer this or Persona 5 Royal more, because like Persona 5 Royal just got technicals, but I do think it got the problem of overpowered navigators.
Yeah, I think they overdid it with Risei and Futaba.
I think Persona how they handle Fuka in Reload is a much smarter way to use navigators due to how her skills actually cost SP, as well as how analysis work.
The full analysis. And that's the other thing too, is I think Reload finally perfected the analysis system, because in the original Persona 3, you had to scan an enemy. It would take like 3, 4, maybe 5 turns before you can analyze them. 4 and 5, it was literally trial and error. You just had to hit every element until you found the weakness. Reload, I think, is brilliant in how it handles it, because you need to have a full turn cycle pass by, and then once it does, then you can scan again, like you said, at the cost of Fuka's SP. That's how I think that is the perfect way to handle analysis in Persona going forward.
I also think the way how her Theurgy handles, her Theurgy is basically what Risei and Futaba does randomly as like a Theurgy. I think that's a good balancing decision.
Yeah, like the way they handle her Oracle ability, like it's good in a pinch, it's not overpowered, it can save you, it can turn the title battle in your favor, but again, like I said, it's not
randomness to it, but like it's not as spammable as Rise and Futaba, who just randomly give it to you for multiple turns.
Yeah, especially I think Rise in particular was the most egregious of them all. Like I feel like she had like so many different abilities that would save me from death to the point where I feel like I couldn't even die.
I think how they handle Fuka in terms of making her feel like an actual navigator and balancing the overpowered navigator buff mechanic. I think they really do it well with Fuka in Persona 3 Reload. And I would like them to continue to design navigators like this rather than just being like giving navigators the ability to randomly buff you throughout the battle.
Yeah, buff you, revive you, save you from death one time, give you all kinds of different, Like, I get the, I appreciate them wanting to make the navigators feel more like participants in the battle. I get that. Like, I appreciate that. But I do think that Rise was overkill, so I think that handling Fuka the way they did in Reload was the most balanced way.
You know what's the most surprising thing now that I think about it? They didn't add, like, a mechanic where you could save the main character from KO.
Oh, like a fatal blow? Yeah, that's right. They didn't do that, did they?
Yeah.
Because I remember in Persona 3 Portable, the C's social link kind of acted as how the Persona 4 social links worked in that it would give the characters those abilities, like wake you up from an ailment, like you said, save you from a fatal blow. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, they didn't add
kind
that.
Kind of an odd omission, I guess. I didn't really consider that. But yeah,
I guess that's a good thing since it will make the game easier.
Even easier.
It already is.
Yeah, because there's already a lot of options in Reload, and I think that would be overboard and make the game pretty much like a breeze to play.
Yeah, but overall combat I think is done rather well in Persona 3 Reload. It doesn't like revamp the whole system, but it's still a lot of fun when you're going dungeon crawling in Tartarus.
Yeah, it takes the core foundation Persona 3 laid out and just pretty much perfects it to a T, honestly.
Yeah. And then there's the dungeon crawling. I think the dungeon crawling is much more interesting in Reload compared to FES.
I do think Tartarus was a massive improvement in Reload.
Like in FES and probably original, it's just climb Tartarus with these randomly generated dungeons. That's it.
And they're all just palette swaps of each other.
In Persona 3 Reload, like there are repeated areas, but each area does feel well defined in each tier. I feel.
Yeah, I feel like in Reload specifically, every block of Tartarus feels like basically a new dungeon. Like you start a new dungeon altogether. Whereas in the original, it was literally just palette swaps. Every block was just a palette swap defined by like its color, and that's about it. So I think that Reload.
I would say like some of the boss areas probably look better in FES, since like all of the boss areas just feel very samey in Reload. But that's basically it in terms of visuals in regards to Tartarus. Also think like what made Tartarus a much more interesting dungeon crawling experience than Reload is that they added a bunch of mechanics to it. They added monad doors, they added like the clock mechanic that allows your other characters to level up to where the MC is. They added the what's the blue jump called again?
Twilight Fragments?
Yeah, I added Twilight Fragments. So and a treasure chest mechanic along with it, with you having to decide if you want to use Twilight Fragments to open treasure chests, or maybe you want to use it to use the clock at the main base so you can heal, so you can traverse through Tartarus more in one day. And overall, like they add a bunch of these mechanics to make dungeon crawling much more interesting in Reload than FES. I especially think adding monad doors is interesting. It's basically act like a mini boss, and when you beat them, you get treasure for it.
Yeah, you get some pretty like really useful items, some good experience, and you also get the major Arcana cards for your shuffle times, which are also nice.
The major card shuffle is another part where they make dungeon crawling more interesting. Like it makes it more interesting to go through one night, because like if you go exit, like your major card Arcana is reset, so it makes you want to choose between, do I go further this night, or maybe try to go to like the point where I can't progress any further and get those bonuses, or do I want to save this for another day and get my characters well rested?
And then you could be like, do I want to use my Twilight fragments to heal up and keep going for the night, or do I want to save them for treasure chests? You know, like there's good decision making in this game that I really appreciate.
Do I try to go for the Monad door or just continue onward? Because if I go for the Monad door, that's going to use some of my resources, like SP. Like SP management, I feel is still a deliberate thing in this game, and it's something you're always keeping an eye on. Even if you can restore it with one of Futaba's liturgies, it's still a random chance. So, you know.
Yeah, and then the best way to recover SP I found was, this is something they brought back from Persona 4 Golden and Persona 5, was like the garden where you can plant crops to restore your SP. But I feel like SP management is still something a lot.
Like I feel like it only becomes like that like near the end of the game. It doesn't become as exploitable as Persona 5 Royal with the coffee.
Yeah, that was definitely like that made SP management a non-issue in Persona 5.
Yeah. You want to cut.
Whereas in Persona 3 Reload, you have to wait several days for your crops to grow and things like that.
Yeah. Overall, they made the dungeon crawling much more interesting in this game, which I think really helps not only Persona 3 Reload but also the answer to be more interesting experiences. But we'll talk about
Tartarus.
Yeah. We'll talk about the answer like much later, but you know.
Yeah, because Tartarus was thankfully nowhere near as monotonous to explore this time around, and obviously, like, you know, Persona 5 was definitely the more ideal route with the fixed dungeons, but with the way Tartarus is structured, you can't really do that. But I do think all the additions to Tartarus makes it way more enjoyable and nowhere near as tedious. So I think they handle it really well in Reload.
I would even add the fact that you can get like different running attacks in the game if you read certain books in like stat building / social link part, like the social sim part. Yeah. Overall, exploring Tartarus, it's not the best thing in the series, but it's still more fun compared to it was in FES.
Yeah, it is leagues better than it was in the original. I think they pretty much handled Tartarus the best way you really could, considering what you know they had to work with.
I think they do a good job of giving you good, interesting options to decide between, in regards to deciding if you want to press on with Tartarus and challenge rooms to get more rewards at the cost of possibly extra resources, or if you should back off and come back at a later date with full resources. There is interesting decision making to be had in the dungeon crawling experience, which is cool. And this is done through a combination of the major Arcana card system, the Monad door system, and the Twilight fragments. But yeah, as for the social link and social sim aspect of the game, those haven't really changed much in terms of mechanics.
It's still the calendar system. You still got your social stats. You know, all that, all the stuff we've seen in the modern Persona games.
Most of the changes comes at night, where you get the hangout events. I think, and I think the hangout. Because like in Persona 3 FES, if you can believe it, none of the guys had social links. At least none of the guys in the party, that is. Had social links with the character, main protagonist.
Which even to this day, after like almost 2 decades, I still can't wrap my head around that decision. It's so strange.
So instead, you don't get Junpei for your Magician Arcana, you get Kenji. So yeah, like in order to make up for that, they try to install hangout events.
They give the male party members, like they call them linked episodes, which not only grant all kinds of different like buffs to them, like stat wise and things like that, get new battle abilities. It also is just basically what we were missing in the original. Was basically just hangouts with the guys. Like they also have hangout events where you can hang out with each party member, and if you do it, it gives you a characteristic on your character, which can improve them in battle considerably. And yeah, that's the other thing too, is that also makes because in the original there was like nothing to do in the dorm. It was just you could go to your room and study, and that's about it. You actually have like nighttime activities with the other characters at night, and it can give you a stat buff. It could, or like a raise a character trait. It could, like you said, give characteristics, etc., etc. You could watch movies with Junpei. You could read books with Fuka.
The watching movie part is with Yukari.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You watch movies with Yukari. You read manga with Junpei. You make tea with Mitsuru.
I think you made coffee with Ken, right? I think.
Yeah, make coffee with Ken. I can't remember what you do with Akihiko. I know.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I know you cook with Shinji.
Yep.
And you take a walk with
Koromaru.
And Koromaru, like, sometimes you can bump into other characters who can raise their social link bond, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But overall,
so this just makes
go on.
I was gonna say this overall just makes the nighttime activities a lot more like there's that, because in the original the only thing you could do at night really was you have 2 social links that are exclusive to nighttime, and that's really about it. Or go to Tartarus, and that's like there's actually things to do at night in Persona 3 Reload. So it's just like adding more content that I think was sorely lacking in the original, and it makes for just a much like more engaging experience overall.
But yeah, like overall the social stim building and social link mechanic hasn't really changed. The only changes is in the presentation. You still try to build up your social stats up through doing a bunch of activities in the game, and use those social links to unlock various social links, and then you just spend time with a bunch of characters to build up their social links. So benefit to that is that you get experience boosts using certain personas. Which does feel significant, because like the answer doesn't have that mechanic where when you fuse some persona they get EXP boost. That's not in the answer, it feels like you feel a whole lot of difference when it's not there.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that. That's for sure.
Yeah, so like it's typical, but when it's missing, you do feel it. So the overall social system mechanic has been relatively the same, except the added nighttime activities.
Yeah, other than that, if you've played Persona 3, the original, you are basically getting that experience just with some extra stuff here and there. But all these extra like bits at nighttime are substantial, and I think it makes the game a lot better. Yeah,
it makes the nighttime activities to at least be more interesting compared to FES.
Yeah, for sure.
As for Persona Fusion, it's still relatively the same, I think, except like quality of life stuff has been added, like the ability to actually choose your skills. Because you couldn't do that in FES.
Which is shockingly, it took Atlas a long time to even include that, because we had not just Persona 3 original, Persona 4 vanilla, Nocturne, Strange Journey, etc. It's so many games. I'm like, why did it take so long to include something so basic? But hey, we got it now, so who am I to complain, I guess.
We also got skill cards. We also got requests from Elizabeth, which gives you a bunch of neat stuff as well as costumes. They added a bunch of stuff to the overall gameplay, and I think overall most of it has resulted in a better game, at least a more fun game, at least.
For sure. Honestly, like I said, and it's like I don't mind that the game is easier, because I think the game is more fun.
Yeah, like the only downside. That's really what matters. The only downside is like the game can be, like the difficulty did get shot a bit. Especially with some of the 30s.
And something they definitely could have improved upon, for sure.
Like even at the end game, like Armageddon, it makes the Reaper just an experienced farm once to get Armageddon.
Basically, yeah, that's about it.
And like there are some 30s that are overpowered, like Scarlet Havoc, pretty overpowered, man.
Yeah.
But like overall, I think the game has benefited from Reload's additions.
I think so. And honestly, I've noticed that Reload has somewhat of a divisive reception. Not it's overall positive, but I have seen some naysayers.
Mhm.
And me personally, I think that all things considered, I do like Reload and find it to be like honestly like the best version of Persona 3 as well as it can be anyway, because it still is missing like certain things from other versions. It doesn't, but we do have the answer DLC, so that's rectified. I understand that people are mad that it's paid DLC, but whatever.
Oh, we'll talk about that when we get to it.
Yeah,
the story.
It's the same.
It's the same.
Same story. Mm-hmm.
It's the same story. Well, pretty much. They added a bunch of stuff, like the Strega stuff.
I like those. I think those extra scenes with Strega make them more interesting characters, because I found them. I thought they were so boring in the original, and I think Jin is still boring, but I do like that we had like one-on-one with Takaya, and we kind of got to hear. Like,
I said, Strega is mostly just Takaya.
Yeah, he's pretty much the face of Strega.
Yeah.
Like, but I do think that those one-on-one scenes with him do add some interesting perspective about his like his ideology and where he's coming from.
Overall, Strega's ideology comes from the fact that they don't have a tomorrow to live through because of the experiments that was done to them. They rather enjoy the power that they have now as a result of that, and don't care about what happens to the future.
They're more like in the moment. I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. And but yeah, and like I think that's personified well in Takaya.
Yeah, because I definitely think
especially
those scenes
when
with him.
Get to the funny part where he tried to justify his position by comparing it to car
accidents, right? And I love that you can even call him out on that, and the main character can be like, "That makes no sense."
Yeah. But like, you understand why he would use that analogy, given that he doesn't have a tomorrow to like.
Yeah, like it might sound silly out of context, but when you like put yourself into Kai's shoes, you're like, I mean, it doesn't make sense to us, but in his twisted mind, it makes sense.
There's neat addition to that. They also modified a few lines here and there, like like in the beach scene. I think like was the woman cross-dressing, or I don't know.
Yeah, he was a cross-dresser, I think.
Yeah, rather than that, they have her instead be a conspiracy nut, which is
pretty funny.
Which is really, really funny.
Well, like she seems like so normal, and she's talking about like the sun is like fake or something, and she starts just going on and on about nonsense. I'm like this is gold, right? This is comedy gold right here.
Like maybe some people have a problem with that stuff that's not like the original, but this is really a lot more funnier, which I think which is what I think the intent was for that scene to begin with. So
yeah, like I was like laughing my ass off, like I'm like because they're like, all right, what's gonna be the twist here? What's gonna be wrong with her? Because like they've all the guys have been shooting their shot with all these other girls on the beach and failing. You're like, all right, what's this one gonna be? And then she turns to be a fucking nut job, and I'm like, this is great. I love this.
But yeah, overall, it's the same story still as Persona 3.
Yeah.
So does Persona 3 hold up? I think overall, yeah, it's still like a really, really interesting tale about death and how to face it head on rather than just like running away from it or like cower before it. Like you see this for the characters and how each of them will experience loss in the game or has experienced loss, and how they try their best to face it at the end. Albeit there are problems to the story. What do you think of the overall pacing in the game?
I think the game is pretty slow to start, honestly. Yeah. I think I think the intro is.
I think the intro does a really good job of hooking you with the concept of the Dark Hour.
Mm-hmm. And like the Orpheus Awakening is really gripping, and
I think they do a good job of foreshadowing death in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but I think something when I was playing Reload, something I realized was I think after the intro, which is like we said is really strong, I noticed the game kind of falls into a bit of a pattern
Like
I don't know, like it feels like a bit of like a monster of the week.
Like it's sort of like that for all of the Persona games, but like its story feels very sprinkled on at the start compared to Persona 4 and Persona 5. Because Persona 4, like you have the party actively trying to solve a mystery, and like they're trying to figure out why they would kidnap this person and how they would do it. Like each time they do it, like they rescue somebody.
Yeah, like in Persona 4, it feels like the characters are actually like participating and trying to achieve a goal, whereas in 3, it's kind of like they're just waiting around for a shadow to appear. Like you're not actively, you know.
And Persona 5 is like there's like mini arc to each of the palaces. You have to overcome, and like with Persona 3, like there is an overall objective to it, which is eliminate the shadows. But you don't really know how to. Like you're just trying to minimize the damage with big shadows that appears at the full moon right now.
Yeah, but and like the game plants a lot of seeds.
Yeah, like there's a lot of foreshadowing in these parts, and like I don't think like these full moon scenes are completely unimportant. I think like the first one does a good job of showcasing Junpei's
like abrasiveness and jealousy.
He wants to be a hero because he feels like a nobody because of his situation with his dad at home. And when he gets his persona, he thinks he is one because he got a special power that nobody does. But then at the moment where it really mattered, he chokes because who wouldn't at that point?
Yeah, it's totally understandable.
But then, like, it showcased to him that he isn't as big of a hot shot as he is, which feed into his complex, which is then escalated further down the road. When he tries to brag to Chidori about how he's this big-time hero and how he's the leader, which it isn't, but it plays into his need to at least feel like a hero to the people around him, which is an essential part of his character development. And I think the first full moon scene highlights and foreshadows that part of his personality really well.
I think that was good because not only did it showcase, like you said, Junpei's flaws, it also was a good job of kind of establishing the full moon shadows are like and what kind of threat they pose. And I think that was good. Like I think the full moon was effective. But
the second one, it showcases Fuka. I think it's a good introduction to Fuka. I think the story between her and
Natsuki, I think.
Yeah, Natsuki is interesting. And I do like how it showcases Tartarus a bit more and foreshadowing its role within all this, kind of. The third one, it's just mostly...
Was it the Love Hotel?
Yeah, that's the Love Hotel.
Yeah, that one out. So that one felt like total filler.
Like you beat it, but the only significant part is like it foreshadows Strega at the end.
But other than that, honestly, I actually didn't even think about this until after I played Reload specifically. But I was like, outside of that, I feel like that whole thing was more like comical than anything else because I feel like that was just an excuse to see Yukari naked and then give her a moment with the main character and like, oh, it's so awkward. And then they go over and Akiko Mitsu like, oh, what happened to you guys? Oh no, don't talk about it. And then the whole thing honestly felt more like it was just comical than anything else.
You go into the room,
so I was like,
you go to the room, Junpei. Why are there 3 coffins?
Honestly though, he's not wrong.
Okay, like I think after that they go to the vacation where
I think that's when the story starts to really develop and pick up. When they introduce like Aegis, and then there's the reveal about Yukari's father and his role in the explosion. I think the beach part onwards is when the story really starts to take shape and it gets a lot more interesting.
Like you get introduced to Aegis, and then Shinji soon joins, as well as Ken and Koromaru. And overall, I think like the game is really interesting as you see how these characters are defined by their loss, and how throughout the game they gain resolve to face the death that has occurred and face their own death in the coming of Nyx, and how each of them want to be able to fight for a tomorrow. And whether you get that tomorrow, it depends on you still, but you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's still an incredibly interesting story overall.
Yeah, it's like despite like it's I think the pacing is the biggest like probably flaw with it. But when the story
like,
really starts to,
I think overall like Persona 3 is probably the best game in regards to how it handles its the god boss that these games have.
Yeah, I think 3 like I feel like the story was building up to Nyx. It felt like Nyx felt like a natural inclusion, and it didn't feel like out of left field as opposed to like Izanami.
Yeah, and even
it was just like
and you
Yaldabaoth.
Yaldabaoth.
Yeah.
I say like Persona 3 is probably the best Persona game, regards to how it integrate the god character in the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I think the main story is really, really good still.
Yeah, it's a great story, dark, very poignant with its themes, emotional. Definitely got me teary-eyed a couple times. I love it. It's definitely one of the best stories for an RPG in a while.
What do you think of the social links in this game? Because I've heard like people say it's a bunch of them were bad, a bunch of them were good.
I definitely think these are the worst social links of the modern Persona games. I think
let's
when
go
they're
through them,
good,
okay?
they are really good, but when they're bad, they're really bad.
Okay, let's go through them. Okay. Kenji, good or bad?
It's okay. I don't know. I didn't think it's. I feel like the problem I have with Kenji is I feel like at the end of it, he just stayed the same as he was. I don't really think he changed. I think that was my problem with it. Like he basically just did a full circle, and he's like, yeah, I still want to date like 40-year-old women.
Yeah.
Like, so I feel like there was no payoff to that. So overall, it was okay.
Mitsuru as the Empress.
Good. One of the better ones.
I think I liked it.
Yeah, it was good. Like, especially that whole thing with her fiance, like her arranged marriage and things like that. And plus, I just like Mitsuru as a character in general. Yeah, I thought her social link was one of the better ones.
I think some people have a problem with how kind of passive she is in regards to running the company. I think that's understandable since like running a conglomerate probably isn't easy, and you probably do have to ask the opinion of the board, because like running a company isn't easy, you know. So
and I can understand why she would, be a little apprehensive.
But I do think how she still stands her ground at the end, when push comes to shove. And I think it's a good social link still. Yeah,
it was good. I liked it.
Fuka, cooking out of 10.
Hers was boring.
Cooking out of 10.
Cooking out of 10. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Like, I do think, like, I think it does do a good job of her trying to find her own path. Like, how she eventually wants to make an electronic club or something like that.
Yeah. Like, there's moments like that, but overall,
Hidetoshi. I didn't finish this guy's social link.
Is that the student council guy?
Yeah, student council guy.
His was good because he starts off as like just a straight up dick, but like he does the exact opposite of what Kenji does, in that Hidetoshi does develop, and he actually ends up becoming a lot more humble at the end of it. So I liked his. His was good.
Bunkichi Mitsuko, which is the Hierophant, which is the.
I really like that one too.
I think that one's
very heartwarming.
Yeah. Like overall, I think like most of these social links are interesting. I at least somewhat interesting, because most of them has deal with death somewhat, or at least like loss at least. Yeah.
Even if it's not like a literal death, there's some kind of like loss to it.
Like you got the literal death with the Sun Arcana with Akaniri Kamaki.
Yeah.
Where he has to like come to terms that he is going to die because of his illness, but he decides to try to leave something behind, which is a story, and that story gets particularly famous, I guess, since you see it referenced in Persona 4, which is really cool.
That was a really good Easter egg.
Yeah. Or get experience a loss of some kind. Like, what's the child's name again?
Maiko?
Yeah, Maiko. her trying to come to terms of how her family structure is basically gone now with the divorce. How she has to come to terms with that. And like overall, I think like most of these are at least decent. Some of them are bad. Like
I didn't like Chihiro.
Chihiro? Oh, yeah. It just yeah, she
just her social link was just kind of like aimless.
Aimless, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty boring.
Yeah. Maya, I think I really like, especially the payoff at the end.
Yeah, that one was one of the best social links, I thought.
It's the best teacher social link. Because you don't actually date the teacher.
I don't know though. Yeah, I love Kawakami though. I don't know, but Maya's pretty up there.
I didn't do the Dr. Kid one with Kisuke, I think, the Fortune one.
Oh, his was good. I liked his. Like him, he's very determined to like follow his own path and doesn't want to like do what his parents want him to do, which is to be a doctor. But he at the same time, he's very clearly passionate about pharmaceutical stuff. So his character was interesting because it's like he wanted to do his own thing just because he wanted to be his own choice, not necessarily because his like parents were kind of forcing him to. It was a good arc. It was a good social link. One of the better ones, I thought.
How about Mutatsu, the drunken monk?
His was pretty good. I mean, I feel like I liked his character.
Yeah.
Like for me, his social link in terms of its structure kind of reminded me of Ouya from Persona 5, and that like I feel like the story being told is interesting, but it's just a lot of like listening to them talk
it's mostly just him listening, basically his regrets essentially.
Yeah,
which I mean, teach you how to not go through it. But then
and that's all. That's good. Like don't get me wrong, but I feel like it wasn't as interesting because of that. It was just a lot of exposition and him just. But like I liked his personality a lot.
Yeah.
So.
I think Baby was really good. What do you think of the Moon one? Nozumi.
That kid can go fuck himself.
I would say he's incredibly unlikable.
Yeah, I mean, in the game's defense, that's exactly what they were going for, but man, he was unpleasant. Like, I almost didn't want to do, if it wasn't for getting experience for my personas, I would have absolutely avoided him at all costs. Like, I felt no sympathy, like, any kind of, like, sob story they were trying to feed me, I'm like, dude, you're a douchebag. I don't care about you.
But overall, like, I will say the social link is probably not as strong as Persona 5 or even 4. Regardless, like, if you overall score the social links in Persona 3. But I do think the one that do stand out in Persona 3 really do stand out.
Like, I think my favorites in Persona 3 would be Akinari. I thought that was very emotional and poignant. I really liked Kazushi's, the track team. I thought with his leg being like really damaged and he's, you know, going through it anyway because he wants his nephew to go to rehab. That was really good.
Yeah.
Like I said, Keisuke's was good. Like I said, overall, I think when they are good, they're really good. But I just think that there's also a lot of bad ones, and I think that they're not as consistently well written as 4 and 5s.
Yeah, like I think Maya's really good as well, especially how through your interaction she comes to become a better teacher. Yeah. I'm not sure how I feel about Mamoru Hayase.
Is he the rival track team member?
Yeah. I just feel like Kazushi was the better track member social link.
Yeah, I feel like he was basically just a lesser Kazushi. Yeah. Like, I just didn't think his story was very interesting.
Yeah. Oh, how about the Link episodes?
Those are great. I think that was something I think I mentioned before. Whereas that was basically what we should have had from the beginning was the social events with the male C's members. That's a good. It's a good replacement for having social links. And
I will say like it probably is not as good as the actual social links that the guys have in Persona 3 Portable. But like what we have compared to FS, I think it is really, really good. I especially like the Link episodes with Shinji. I think they're really cool. You get to see a glimpse of how Mitsuru, Akihiko, and Shinji went through Tartarus on their own at first, which is really, really cool, I think.
Mm-hmm. It humanizes Shinji and adds like it's just depth to the characters that we didn't get.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's just like such a baffling design choice that they chose not to give the male C's members social links in the original. So I think that the link episodes are a great way to rectify that. And I was like really happy with the way they handled them.
And like you get the link episodes like with Koromaru too, you know.
Mm-hmm. Best boy.
Is there anything else to talk about the overall story and writing in the game?
I don't think so. I think we covered kind of all the bases.
So like overall, like I think Persona 3 Reload is a good version of Persona 3 overall to play through. It definitely is the best version to play through right now, I think. It, like in terms of it being like, if you just want one version to play through Persona 3, I would say Persona 3 Reload. Especially since especially since Fest isn't really available, I think. Only Persona 3 Portable is.
Yeah, I think if you want to play FES, the only way to do that, as far as I know, is on the PlayStation 3 store. So if you got your PS3 around, then then sure, give it a go, I guess. But I think Reload is like definitely the best version of Persona 3 that we have, honestly.
It plays the best. It mostly tells the story pretty on point, with only being a minor modifications, which doesn't really change the overall point of the story. The visuals are really good, even though there is some aspect of the game that you can prefer in the original FES version, but still really good. And overall, it's still a really good version to play through, I think.
Yeah, like if I were to recommend a newcomer Persona 3, I would say play Reload.
Oh yeah, wait. Before we continue to an answer, what do you think of the ending? Persona 3.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. It had me just as teary-eyed this time as it did every other playthrough.
I think like Persona 3 Reload probably has the most poignant ending of all the other Persona games in regards in this style. I'm not sure about Persona 2. You know?
Yeah, I haven't really played much of the first two games, so I'm really not. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, like I think the ending is like the Persona 3 overall probably has like one of the best endings in the game.
Yeah, in the whole series, I think for sure.
But yeah, especially like hey, use the final seal. Your HP is 0. I wonder what that means.
And that was actually something I picked up on my last playthrough. I was like, wait a second, that costs all your HP, like literally all of it. So I was like, that's a really, really slick choice to foreshadow what happens.
Or it's just like a beautiful ending, I think, in regards to how you see your next, how the main protagonist does his best to honor his promise of meeting the party at the end, how every party member regain their memory at the end and go to the rooftop, and then the game just ending when the main character closes their eyes.
It was perfect ending.
Oh wait, you say that you would say that the visual aspect of Tartarus was good, right, in this game?
Yeah, it was definitely. I thought it was a big improvement over the original.
What do you think of the next battle then? Because some people have a problem with how it looks, kind of.
I guess maybe the green lighting was a little strong, but then again, I feel like Tartarus always had that, or the Dark Hour always had that, like that.
I don't mind it remains consistent.
Like whenever you're outside in the Dark Hour, like in the original, I feel like that was always there, unless maybe I'm remembering wrong. I didn't have that big of a problem with it. I do feel like they probably could have held back a little bit. I do think it was a little much, but overall, I didn't think it was that bad.
Like I think it fit with the overall aesthetic of the Dark Hour, I think, which I didn't mind too much. Though I would say like the original or FES version that does look a bit cooler, just because it just like looks like a normal night, kind of. in the original.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't mind it since I think if like the green backlight does fit with the dark hour aesthetic more, so I'm half on that. I can take it as a go.
Yeah, I'm 50-50, honestly. I think they both work fine.
Okay. Let's go through the answer now. I forgot one more thing about the original. Chidori, her death or life is changed from the original to FES. Because from what I've learned, her dying, you can't change that in the original. But then they changed that in FES.
Yeah, in FES you got to go like way out of your way to even make it happen, but it is so bad. It feels like I want to call it fan fiction, but I feel like calling Chidori's revival fan fiction is an insult to fan fiction. It's like the worst written part of the game.
Oh boy. Oh, it's canon, I think, since I think they sort of...
Actually, I actually looked it up, and it's actually left ambiguous as to whether it's canon or not, apparently.
I don't know. I like... Junpei refers to her in Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, so...
That's what I heard, but like, I think that was... Ultimately, there was no like actual confirmation if he was. I don't know if he was. I never played that game, so I'm not sure. But I did look it up, and apparently, like Atlas never came out and said, "Yeah, she's alive," or "She's dead," or "alive."
I mean, he daydreams about her. It's just like, I love you, Chidori, to a crowd where he think he wins like the championship.
Yeah, I mean,
like a confession of love. So like,
it could be.
That's like, I don't know. That's basically just saying she's alive at that point.
My headcanon is she's dead.
Yeah. Like in Reload, you still have to do a bunch of stuff to do it, and you have to like do a hangout event with him in order to do it too. Because if you miss it, she's dead. It's interesting to say the least to revive her like that.
Because I feel like that just goes against the theme of Persona 3. Like it just like it's like accepting that death is a part of life and to like cherish the moments we have with everyone. That'd be like if because as far as I know, because in Portable, if you play as the female character, you can actually save Shinji, which is also really bad. But as far as I know, that is not canon. Yeah. But that would be like if you canonize that and be like, yeah, no, he's fine. Like everybody's fine. Nobody dies in this game. Like it just that it's self-defeating. The whole message of the game is ruined. So if they just keep reviving people or saving people, it's like, what's the point of this game's story? It's like, not telling me anything.
Akihiko had to deal with both his sister's death and Shinji's death in the game. Ken had to deal with his mother's death, which caused him to try to kill Shinji, but they also had to deal with the fact that he really did like Shinji before he knew he was ultimately the cause of her death, and then had to come to terms with Shinji's death as well. Mitsuru has to deal with her father's death, whom she wanted to protect, because she couldn't stand to see him being constantly weighed down by the sins of her grandfather. It's Yukari with her father's death. It would have been Junpei with Chidori's death, but she's alive and Reload and FS if you do that, you know. And over, like, even Koromaru sort of implied to be like moving on from his previous owner's death, who died in a traffic accident. So like each of these characters is like molded by their loss, and constantly throughout the story they're like challenged by those themes, I think, which is really interesting, I think. So I can understand why Chidori's death can feel very weird to be reversed like that.
Yeah, because I mean at that point it's like, hey, why kill anyone? Shinji, bring Shinji back. Bring Mitsuru's dad back. Everybody, you know.
To be fair, she does loses her memory at that point, so is it like really the same person at that point?
I mean, in a sense, yeah. because as far as we know, there's been no confirmation that she ever like regains her memories.
Yeah.
So she could still be dead in not in the literal sense, but like a metaphorical sense, and that it's not really the Chidori that Junpei fell in love with.
But yeah, overall, I can understand why people don't like how Chidori's revive, since it goes on against the theme of death and that facing it, being able to accept it and face it.
Yeah.
Okay, the answer. The answer, like I said before, was post-game DLC. Now, the original didn't have the answer. It was packaged along with FES. But since we never got the, I don't think we ever got the original, right? We only got FES.
Yeah, we did.
We did? Oh, okay. Then,
The original Persona 3.
yeah, okay. The Persona 3 FES got us to buy another version of the game to get the post-game DLC.
That was the start of it all. Of Atlas re-releases.
Yeah. Atlas never changes.
No, never change, Atlas. Never change.
But yeah, so like the post-game DLC, the main character is Aigis this time. So like, and like the overall story and the tone is the whole party member trying to face the death of the main character who sacrificed himself to seal to make the Great Seal. Now they don't know that, so like what happens is basically there's something happens that creates a time loop within their dorm and they can't leave, and they basically have to, and there's like a hidden area hidden beneath the dorm called the Abyss of Time, and they basically have to traverse through the Abyss of Time to find out what's causing them to what's basically causing the time loop, you know.
So it's like a Groundhog Day.
Yeah. And then it turns out they're the one who's trapping themselves in, because they can't really move on from the fact of how Makoto, aka the main protagonist, just died like that, and they're not ready to move on from that. And overall, the overall story is them figuring out what happened to the main character and being able to move past the fact that he's really dead.
And like that's a good premise on paper. Like that's a good foundation for a story.
I do like for each of their traversal of the Abyss of Time, you do see many flashbacks of how flashback regarding where the motivation for their Persona awakening comes from. With Junpei, it's like him not wanting to feel like a nobody and not be like his father. Yukari finding the truth of what happened to her father. Mitsuru wanting to save her father from the dark hour and overall the sins of her grandfather. Akiko wanting strong because he couldn't protect Mickey back then. And Ken wanting to find out the entity that ultimately caused his mother's death. And I think that's most of the flashback, right?
As far as I know, yeah, that's all.
And then you got Aigis, who's like, you basically see a flashback of her just wanting to abandon her human self because she just couldn't take the loss of the main character because protecting him was her life's mission. And overall, I think it's a really interesting story of how each of them tried to find what is the best way to move on from this. The problem is the story distribution in this game, I think.
Yeah, like so my thing is this, like it's a good foundation for a story. The themes really resonate. The idea, the theme of like moving on and acceptance and all that stuff, that's all great. What I take issue with, and like basically, all right, so basically what I take issue with is that ultimately most of the game is just seeing flashbacks. They'll go through a door, they'll see a flashback, talk about it, involve Metis in the conversation, go back, okay, next dungeon, next flashback, talk about it, involve Metis in the conversation, rinse and repeat like 6 or 7 times. So basically, like the problem kind of is that fact that there's just really no conflict in the game until like the final act when they have that tournament at the end. But like it's basically them just kind of like going through the different doors, seeing the flashback, and then there's not really like, I feel like the game just kind of meanders and spins its wheels for most of its runtime. As you know, Persona 3 might have not had the greatest pacing and it had a slow start, but ultimately the game like did ultimately have conflict in its story. It did move. It went places. Whereas in the answer, I just feel like.
I feel like the answer's problems. Like, I don't think the flashback are the problem themselves, because like they're like 5 minutes each.
Yeah, no, they're good. It's just a matter of the fact that that's kind of like that's the majority of the game.
Like, I think the problem is like how for every 5 minutes you have to go through like a few hours of dungeon crawling to get there.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Is like the story is just like delivered in. It's like breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
And then this is like hardcore dungeon crawling to the max. Like you'll have like a 4 to 5 hour dungeon depending on like how thorough you want to be and all that, and how many quests you want to do and stuff like that. But there, like not even just like even putting aside the fact that like the game is really just flashbacks. The story, like you said, the story distribution is so sparse, and it's like not. The game heavily favors dungeon crawling over its storytelling. And it just makes it's so uneven, and it funnily enough feels like the antithesis to Persona 3.
Overall, like, I like the content of the story. How it's delivered within the context of the DLC is questionable, I think. Yeah. Especially like this is my thoughts just playing through the reload version of the answer. I'm not sure how I feel with the FES version of the answer. But yeah, overall, I think the story, I think it's good, especially as a post-game story. Answers some questions you might have had, and concludes the main party's arc of having to come to terms with the death of their leader, which I think is good. I especially like, I like how each character have their own different thoughts of how to move on from his death. Some wanting to move past it, some not sure what to do, and Yukari wanting to go back to change it. I think that's an interesting concept, and it goes all along with the theme of having to face death.
Yeah, and I do like that moral conflict at the end of the game when they have to decide how to proceed, and how like Ken and Akihiko want to honor the main character's sacrifice. Yukari wants to go back. Junpei is sort of like in between. I do like that the characters butt heads, and I do think that's when the story starts to finally like take off. But by the time you get there, it's already basically over.
Oh yeah, I think the added hangout events in this game kind of in the answer, which is
they
cool.
did, and I thought that was go ahead.
I like, rather than being activated by like a calendar system, since this doesn't have a calendar system, that's the Groundhog's Day. It's activated by you finding particular items, and I think it's pretty cool. I wish they were voiced though. They're not voiced. Yeah. So yeah. But hey,
ultimately, I do think it does alleviate some of the tediousness of the straight-up dungeon crawling nature that the answer has, and it does it feels like it also kind of brings the characters a bit closer, because when you start the answer, there's a very clear disconnect between the characters. It feels like after the main character's death, everyone just kind of like fizzled out, and they didn't really know how to deal with it. And I thought that was including these hangout events and bringing the characters back together, kind of to like what they were. Or at least like kind of resembling what they were before that happened at the end of the base game, was a nice touch. And again, like I said, it did help alleviate some of the like mundaneness that the answer has. And it kind of brings that essence of that social sim slightly to that Persona 3 had to the answer.
Well, what do you thought of the anime cutscenes in the answer? Do you know the one I'm trying to refer to?
Yeah. I mean, I thought the design of that particular scene in the original like answer definitely had more of an edge to it. Yeah. And it felt like honestly something out of like a horror anime.
I do think the reload version does fit with over theming in the reload more though.
Yeah, there's this part of me that feels like the original version was more like it felt more like shock, kind of like oh, that's some cool body horror.
I will say like Persona 3 FES does probably have some of that 90s edge to it. that
Yeah.
you probably can't replicate as well. Like, you can see this, like, recently, I think the main Twitter account of Atlas tried to release a version of the FES opening, but with reloads scenes as well. It doesn't hit as much, just because it doesn't have that 90s edge.
Yeah.
But, like, like, at the same time, I can understand why, since it wasn't, like, Persona 3 Reload is something else entirely. Give you that edge. I think, like, what I tried to convey, at least in this cutscene, is like the sadness of how a parting, a death is, of that parting, rather than the grotesqueness of it.
So in a way, like, in a way, I feel like the Reload version actually might be a little more fitting, just because it doesn't. Like I said, I feel like it was very stylistic in terms of visuals in the original, but like I said, it also feels like it's like body horror. Whereas in the Reload version, its tameness feels almost more like, because that shadow, I guess, was a representation of Caesar's grief over not being able to move on from the main character's death. So I think that his disappearance, like being more tame, feels more like it's them coming to terms with it, as opposed to having that, like, it's like the original was more like shock value. It's kind of how my takeaway from it anyway.
But yeah, like, the Persona 3 Reload overall, like, has a different aesthetic to it compared to FES, which is notable. But I don't mind the differences. I think the differences is interesting in how they handle it.
Yeah, and honestly, I do appreciate the fact that they weren't trying. It wasn't like a one-for-one recreation all the way through.
But hey, at least we get 2 openings for the base game and the answer. Like FES, which was like a combination of both, as well as the FES opening kind of being like a game trailer for some reason. Yeah, that was kind of strange, but that's probably why I don't know. Why I really like FES. I don't think I like the opening overall that well, at least compared to the other Persona 3 openings I've seen. I do think that was the weakest of the Persona 3 openings out of all the versions. Not bad. Like, it's okay, but like, I really like the one on the PSP. I think that was really cool. Oh, Soul Phrase, I think. I think my favorite opening for Persona 3 probably is the vanilla version, Burn My Dread. But I have to say, though, for the base Reload, not the answer, but the base game Reload, Full Moon Full Life, that opening is amazing. I also think the opening for the answer is really cool as well. That was really good too. The song was good. The animation would fit the themes of the story. It was good. So we talked about the story. Overall, I think it's a good conclusion to the overall story of Persona 3. Just execution is not. Like, that was the problem, I think. Well, conclusion sense. The story still continues, kind of. True. So, the gameplay. So, what can you expect from the gameplay of the answer? Dungeon crawling. Hardcore to the max, like nocturne dungeon crawling. What difficulty do you play in this game? I played it on normal. I played it on Heartless. Did you really? How was that? There are moments where you just die because of how unlucky you are. I think I had to grind a bit 2 times in the answer. One is through, I think through the 3rd door, when the bosses was just killing me, so I grinded a bit. And the other time is the tournament. It's really, really hard. Those even on normal, those fights are pretty tough. It's really, really hard. I show you how hard it was after this, but even outside those moments, I feel like the answer is really it's a significant step up from Persona 3 Reload's difficulty. I agree. Overall, I think this is really a pretty tough game to go through, especially on Heartless. I feel like the difference is especially in the Monad doors. real in the base game, like you have Monad doors that give you like a tough enemy and then you beat them. But if you lose, you can just retry it. You can't do that. If you die to a Monad door in the answer, at least on hardest difficulty, you just get a game over.
Oh wow, like good old-fashioned back to the title screen.
There is changes to how they implement Monad doors rather than one door. Like the reload has like 2 type of Monad doors in the base game. The normal ones where you just fight tough enemy, and the last one right near the boss where you fight like 3 versions, 3 mini bosses back to back.
Yeah.
In reload, there are like when you get a Monad door, there are 3 doors, left to right.
Like easy, medium, hard,
easy,
basically.
Medium, hard, basically. If you go to hard, you fight 3 mini bosses back to back, and they're pretty hard because you know how like they have each door has like 3 areas to it. The Moana door is basically tailored for like near the tail end of those areas. If you do it at the start, it's a pretty hard challenge. I think the Moana doors are made interesting by the fact that there's great rewards if you do get through it.
Yeah, you get some really, really good. I got some like super overpowered accessories.
You get some really bonkers accessories and get like good weapons and armor to it, and as well as you get 2 major Arcana draws, which is really, really good.
Yeah, so it might be a difficult task, but the game absolutely high risk, high reward is the name of the game for it.
Yeah, and like the Moana doors and the Arcana system really makes the game interesting to go through. Especially, I think the major Arcana cards makes the Dungeon Crawling more interesting because of the rewards you get through it. Because in the answer, at the start of the game, where you don't have any of the major Arcana cards, there's no really interesting decision making before or to rest or keep going on, because like there's no time system in this game, so like there's no really incentive for you to just keep going if you could just go back and re-enter. Once you get the major Arcana cards though, you do, because you get a bunch of good rewards through it, potentially. In order to keep your rewards, you might just want to keep going and deal with your diminishing SP, which I think really adds to the risk and reward aspect of dungeon crawling in this version of the answer.
Yeah, I thought the way they handled the Monad doors in the answer were better than how they handled them in the base game.
And then they added the clock mechanics though too, so you can more or less keep your characters evenly level, kind of, you know. Yeah. They also did an interesting mechanic. They added one more function to the Twilight Fragments in terms of giving you the ability to replicate cards using 1 shard, which I think is pretty cool. Yeah,
that was a good addition.
I do think it is interesting how they balance the characters this time through, because like, you know how the characters are nerfed in this part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like each character have some different skills compared to when they get it. Is who's a better healer at the start? Ken.
Then I actually used Ken throughout the entire game.
Like Ken gets Meteorama really early on compared to Yukari. So like
it takes her a long time to get Meteorama.
Yeah, and overall, like I think like the dungeon crawling aspect of Persona 3 really gets pushed to the limit here. But I think the additional mechanics as well, the change mechanics in the answer does make it worthwhile still. And like I do think the improved difficulty does make the dungeon crawling be much more interesting, because like on hardest difficulty, your death is always present, is always with you, man, if you're not careful. There's like 5 or 6 instances that I played through the game where I just died and then lost to like an hour or 2 of progress.
I couldn't handle that.
Yeah, the difficulty spike at the end is really really intense. Akihiko and Ken, if I don't buff and weaken them, they just one of their hits just almost kills Metis right there.
Oh damn.
And like I think Metis is also an interesting character. Like I think she's like the character that utilizes the shift mechanic the best, just because she gets like a 20 or 40% damage boost if she gets shifted from Aegis. Yeah, which is a really big bonus. And overall, I think she's a really good physical attacker with decent elemental coverage.
Yeah, not to, because she not only does she cover 2 elements, she also has, again, like you said, physical attacks as well as great buffs.
Yeah.
So she was a character I used from start to finish.
If I only had to use one character, like I always use her. But like I try to use every character in the game, so you know. Like, overall, like the dungeon crawling, if you didn't like the dungeon crawling Persona 3, you probably won't like it in the answer.
Yeah, especially given the fact that that's the only thing you do in this game.
If you liked it, I think you might like in the answer, especially if you thought Persona 3 Reload difficulty was a bit low.
Yeah, the game, it definitely has more of a challenge in comparison.
Yeah.
Even on normal difficulty, there were a couple times where I had a hard time.
This game really does get you to play fight against dual bosses a lot. Almost every boss encounter in the game is like against dual bosses. Even at the end, where you're fighting the tournament, it's like you're fighting 2 bosses. The fact that you have to deal with 2 enemies does change your strategy a bit compared to the base game, especially compared to Persona 4 and 5. That's most of the strong bosses in those games were one-on-one encounters. So that does change your strategy a bit.
And plus it's see, this is an advantage I had because I played the original The Answer way back when. I knew to keep Metis in my party for all the way through because she's the only character you could use in the tournament. So you gotta keep her leveled up.
Even if you didn't, I think this game has the benefit of having the clock level her up, so it's not that big of a problem.
Yeah, but it's just good. It saves you the hassle, like as that keeps her leveled up and everything. And
yeah, overall, I do think the game is interesting gameplay-wise if you do like the dungeon crawling aspect of Persona 3. I think the revamp Maul at Door system, the Arcana, the Major Arcana card system, Twilight fragments with the chest and mechanic. I think though they overall make the dungeon crawling be interesting still, even though you might get sick of it near the end.
Yeah, I think the small additions to the dungeon crawling do make it a little bit better than base Reload.
That along with the difficulty increase.
Yeah, and plus the answer also isn't very long. So even by the time you start getting fatigued of the dungeon crawling, the game is pretty much over.
It's like 30 hours.
Yeah, 25-30 hours, give or take. So it's not too lengthy.
But yeah, I think that's all for Persona 3 and the answer, right? Okay. We almost forgot. In the answer for Persona 3 Reload's version, Yukari is admittedly different compared to the original answer.
And much to many fans' dismay.
Yeah. Because like in the original, from what I've seen in cutscenes, she's like very confrontational. Extremely confrontational. One might even say bitchy at the extreme.
Yeah. If the internet is anything to go by, that's probably the word they would use.
Now, I think it's understandable why she's like that, given the context of the story, of how like she just wants to move on from like the Tartarus stuff because of the promise she made to the MC. But then at the end, she makes a 180 because it's an actual chance of possibly saving his life. When you get down to it, she does want him alive and see him again. And then when you see how Aegis has the MC's power, that boils over even more so because I guess was the only one who got to see the MC before he dies, and 2, she's the only one out of the group that seems to be so wishy-washy, which probably pisses her off even more.
Yeah.
So like it's understandable, but I can understand why people didn't like it.
Yeah, honestly, I could see both sides. I can kind of see where she's coming from, but I can also see why it would be frustrating for many people.
They sort of change it in Persona 3 Reload's version of the answer. Her actions are still the same, but her demeanor is much more understanding. She's
nowhere near as antagonistic.
I mean, she still points out stuff like. She's more passive aggressive in this version, I think, than just being outright aggressive in the original. At least that's how I saw it.
I agree. Because I actually, after I beat the Reload version of the answer, I watched the cutscene again on YouTube of the original, and you could definitely tell this difference in like the tone, I guess you could say, of Yukari's demeanor.
And I would say it's like she seems much more understanding of why the other didn't want to go back. Like in the original, in the original, she just called them cowards.
It's in Reload. If I'm remembering right, she even says
she understands. She understands why they're so hesitant.
Because I think there was a dialogue where she was like, "Oh, I'm not even saying that I'm objectively correct or anything like that." I'm pretty sure there was the line or something along those lines. And I'm like, this is a lot more reasonable. I still think. Like, regardless of how you feel about her motivation behind wanting to do what she's doing, I do think that the Reload interpretation was better because she just goes off the handle in the original, I think, and it's just hard to it's hard to feel for her, I thought.
Like, I think
compared to the Reload version.
The Reload version probably fits better just because it actually feels like she's friends with the C's members.
Yeah.
Like, in the original, it seems like she just outright hates their guts sometimes,
and that goes against kind of like the entirety of Persona 3 in general because they forged a bond throughout the course of the story. So for her to like turn out like that way and call them out like that, and it felt like it honestly felt out of character in the original. So I honestly, in retrospect, I think that Reload did handle it better as a whole.
Like, I understand where people are coming from, where they missed that version, because, like, it does make it seem like Reload lacks some of the bite it might have had compared to original. Just, like, because of the Yukari stuff, as well as the cutscenes where you see the MC disappear. I think, I can see why people see that if they, like, just look at it by itself. But I do think, I do think those two changes, why different, still makes sense within the context of Reload.
Because like the original version, like when Yukari is doing what she's doing, like it kind of feels like just artificial drama where I was able to it felt more realistic in Reload, I thought. Especially when, like we both said, like she was at least understanding of the other perspectives too. Whereas in the original she was just like, this is what's happening whether you like it or not. And like that's the thing too, is
the difference is like after the key battle in the original, she just outright tries to grab it.
That's right. Yeah. So she still hasn't changed her mind, or she's still,
And then the difference in Reload is like she just asked if I guess is really not going to go back. Like as what she's doing one last play because she really wants to try to save Makoto / the main character.
Like I think in Reload she doesn't feel anywhere near as selfish. I thought her actions in the original came out of selfishness and just complete disregard of everyone else's opinions, whereas here she was like, I still don't agree with what she wanted to do, but I do really respect that she was a lot more understanding of everyone else. And even when she lost like the battle, outside of trying to like do one last plea, she basically accepted the loss. And I thought that was very like adult and mature of her. And that reflects well in how she developed in the course of the base game of Persona 3 Reload. of the story, because she matured throughout the game. So for her to like in the original to kind of like fly off the handle and be like, yeah, no, me, we're doing what I want, me, it's counter to her character. So at the end of the day, yeah, I thought when you watch them back to back, I think Reload's interpretation, because even though the original might have more like emotional weight to it in the sense that it's just very dramatic, but I thought it was melodramatic. It was too much. Whereas in Reload, it was more like realistic and understanding for her character at that point. So I think my ultimate takeaway is that, yeah, I think Reload handled that scene a lot better, and I think that I was able to like feel for Yukari a lot more.
Yeah, I think like taking it like overall, the Reload scenes are probably better suited in regards to the overlying story. I will say like I can understand why some people feel the opposite, because like the Reload version doesn't have as drastic reaction out of you, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I remember the original version of the scene really, when they're like in the dorm like talking about it. I remember the original like escalated really quickly. Like it went in from all right guys, what do we do, to like a full-blown shouting match in like 5 seconds, whereas in the Reload version they were all sitting and calmly discussing you know what they want to do, what everything, they basically how they all feel and what their perspectives are, and they all voice their opinions. They're like, okay, this is mine, okay, no, this is my opinion, let's try to sort this out in the best way we can. Whereas, so it felt a lot more mature and adult. So that was kind of how I felt about it. I could see why some people might get more gratification out of how the original handled it, but to me, I thought Reload was more realistic.
Yeah. But like overall, I do think like the Reload versions of the answer is probably the best version of the answer. It plays better. The dungeons are well, there's better dungeon mechanics in the game in regards to how they handled how you move, since you get extra movement options further down the line, extra ambush options, how they handled the Monad door system. The clock system to level up is still the same, but it makes dungeon crawling much smoother, and like
it incentivizes experimentation between your characters. Like, oh, you feel like more willing to swap out characters and experiment with other party members.
And the characters are better balanced here compared to Fez. Yeah, and overall, I think the story, why like having a different. It feels different from the original. I do think it still execute the spirit of the story extremely well.
Yeah, I think my problem with the story in the answer really boils down to how the story is told. I think that's where I think
the problem is, well, gameplay wise, you're not getting you're only getting bits of story throughout most of the dungeon crawling experience, which can make it feel very. Feel frustrating, uneven, if you just want to see the story.
Yeah, it's like really given to you in like very tiny breadcrumbs, and also like, not to retread old ground too much, but I think also the fact that the game is really almost entirely just flashbacks, kind of like makes it seem like there's not really any progress happening. But at the end of the day, I think the story has its heart in the right place. And I appreciate the message. I just don't think it was executed. I think it boils down to execution. The story itself as a concept is fine, and I think the message is good and the themes are good, but it boils down to the execution. I think that's really how I would probably, you know.
I didn't mind too much, because like I actually enjoyed the gameplay in the answer, just because the additions and stuff. I do think. I think the overall balance is pretty good in the answer compared to Persona 3 Reload and Persona 5 Royal, and even Persona 5.
Yeah, I agree. And definitely, this was definitely a much more tolerable experience for me as opposed to the original version of the answer, which is like a slog.
You know, they even have compendium in the original, I think.
Yeah, how did they? Who thought that was a good idea? Oh my god, I can't even. with that. That's a whole other topic right there.
Which now gets us to ask the question: should you buy this? And that's a loaded question because of how you buy it is very questionable, because it's part of the expansion pass, which is $40.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to like how Atlas and a lot of other companies
it's
have
like 40,
like with their business practice.
It's like $40-$50, and like the problem is that the expansion pass includes various stuff, including the answer, but you can't buy the answer separately. You have to buy the expansion pass. Like the expansion pass doesn't just have the answer; it has like a bunch of costume DLCs and music DLCs. But the fact that the only way you can get the answer through buying an expansion pass and not being able to buy it separately, like for $20-$30, is very, very questionable.
Yeah, and not to mention that, because when you factor in the fact that the PS2 version of like FES has the answer included in it, it feels kind of like a ripoff. Whereas, because here you have to buy it two separate, Yeah,
I mean, it depends. Like, if you're going for the Japanese mindset, they had to buy FES again after playing Persona 2.
Yeah, and for us too. That's the thing. Because when I played Persona 3 way back in middle school, all we had was the vanilla version. So, and then FES came out like, I don't know how many months later or something like that. So for many people, myself included, we technically did have to buy Persona 3 a second time. But for people that haven't, like for people whose first experience with Persona 3 was FES, then they got a game and then another extra game as a bundle. Yeah.
I mean,
but this also goes back to like Atlas is like re-releasing games, and that's a whole other topic. Like
that can be its own topic all of its own in regards to Atlas's re-releases being as they are. Like, it weren't much a big problem when it came out, but now it's like it can get to the point where you have to decide if you even want to buy the game at release or just wait for the eventual re-release.
Yeah, because it's at this point it's almost inevitable, really. Persona 3, like, Persona 4, 5.
Is Metaphor gonna get a re-release? I don't know.
I'm expecting it.
I don't know. I bought the collector's edition, but it's probably gonna get a collect. It might have it. I don't know. Maybe there won't. Like, is Persona 3 Reload gonna have one?
I mean, here's the thing: is as based on what I heard, Atlas has said outright they're not going to do that. Yeah. But here's my thing: is if they say they're going to, then people aren't going to buy the game. So of course they're going to say they're not going to do a re-release down the line. You know, so I'm expecting a re-release with the FemC. I'm expecting that, and which also includes the answer. And I'm also expecting a Metaphor re-release as well. I think it's just at this point it's inevitable because they've done it. Because like I said, Persona 3, 4, 5 all have releases. Catherine a re-release. Devil Survivor 1 and 2 re-releases. Shin Megami Tensei 5 has Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, and then like I'm probably missing some too. So I'm honestly expecting it.
Atlas re-releases. Is there a list? Let's see. Growlancer remake. Persona 2 Innocent Sin and Eternal Punch for FreeSB. Was there a re-release for Etrian Odyssey 2?
Oh, I'm not familiar with that series.
There was a re-release for Tokyo Mayara Sessions, but I'm not sure what that does. But yeah, like, they have a bunch of re-releases. But yeah, that's our thoughts on the overall thought if you should buy Persona 3 Reload. Like, if you're a big fan and you have money to burn, or like you're a mega fan, like, I would say it's worth it. But yeah, that price point is pretty steep if you're just interested in the DLC. Like, if you want the music pack and the Velvet Room attendant costumes, then that might be worth it. But if you just want the DLC, it might be steep.
Yeah, it's a big ask. It is. Like if you just want to play the answer, you can't just play it on its own. You have to have the base game.
Yeah. But yeah, it is a steep price. Even if you spend like I don't want to say like at least like just play it for a bit. So I don't think price points should reflect hours. But yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's still a big ask, and it is kind of just like kind of a scummy, business practice. I think as a whole.
Yeah. Overall, I think Persona 3 Reload is a really good version of Persona 3. Now, is it the definitive version that everybody was looking for? No.
Not quite.
Not quite. I don't think we're ever gonna get a definitive version of Persona 3 right now, especially with how there are differences between the lighting and cutscene direction in Persona 3 FES and Reload. But I do think it is the best version of the game to play right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Like overall, not only due to its own merits as a game, also it's more readily available than FES.
Yeah, it's just a lot easier to access, and there's just no reason not to play this version of the game.
And then like comparing to Persona 3 Portable, I do think Persona 3 Reload is probably the better way to experience the story, just because Persona 3 Reload is much more cinematic than Portable.
Yeah, because Portable told its story in a visual novel format, and I think that kind of took away the impact of certain scenes.
Like, even though like I do recommend if you do like Persona 3 a lot to still play Portable, since it got a bunch of stuff that's not in Reload right now, like the guy's social links.
Female main character, new music. Like she has a lot of exclusive content. So I feel like that her like half of the game definitely warrants a playthrough of Portable just to see like all the additions.
Yeah. But overall, Persona 3 Reload itself, I think, is a pretty good remake. There are differences, but it's pretty faithful to the spirit of the original, I think.
Yeah, it's very clear that the people working on it were very passionate and cared about Persona 3. Like, it's very obvious that they were big fans of Persona 3 when it came out. So, and I think it shows. Great game, great remake. Highly recommend. One of the best games of the year.
Yep. Like, it came out this year, right?
Yeah. I think February.
Yeah, okay. I'd say either this game or Tsukihime Remake is probably my game of the year. Which is kind of weird since they're both remakes.
Yeah. I'm still thinking it's a toss between this and I think Yakuza Infinite Wealth for me is my game of the year. I'm kind of leaning towards Infinite Wealth, but not by much.
Okay. I think that's all for this video. Thank you for joining me, Sword.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay. I think that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and that's all. See you later, folks.
Take care, guys.